What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield holding it down for us in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We're brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% on your first Wrangler.com order when you use promo code GOJO15. We got a great show for you. As always, download, subscribe, rate, review. Leave us a 5-star rating. Check us out on the DraftKings YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, DraftKingsNetwork.com, all live 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. Thank you to everybody who threw us up there in your Spotify year-end wraps on the podcast yesterday.
Yeah.
Always love to see that. Appreciate everybody who listened and checked that out. More goodies for you today. We've got Jason Fitz, our good friend from Yahoo Sports, stopping by as we're going to do the NFL Playoff Committee rankings coming up in the second hour. And then the Hall of Famer, Emmitt Smith, a guy who my dad personally had to see, I'm sure, way more than he would actually like to, given how good Emmitt Smith was at football.
I'm trying to figure out if the pain of tackling Emmitt Smith, which I played against him at that running back position more than any other player that I played against in the NFL. We've become very good friends. Such a good dude. I can't decide if that was more painful or the kidney stone that I have right now. I'm amazed.
Oh, no.
Okay, this is the second time I've had a kidney stone. I had one in the early 90s where my wife had to drive me to the emergency room as I was doubled over in the back of the car. And I had that feeling again yesterday and went to the emergency room. And sure enough, I have a kidney stone. So if you see me leave the screen, that's because I'm trying to pass said kidney stone. And you may hear a scream out of me when I do. But I'm amazed at surgeries and pain in football and all that, and nothing matches. And for those out there who have had a kidney stone, and I know, Jesse, you have, because I'm going to get to you in a second about that, it is one of the most constant painful things I have ever experienced. And I was sprinting by the time I decided I had to go to the emergency room. I was sprinting there to get through all the rigmarole, to get into a room, to get drugs in me to stop the pain. Because I remembered from 30 years ago how the pain stopped, and I knew that was going to happen here. And I'll never forget so we go through everything, and it's fine. You know, I just have to pass the stone, which is always an interesting thing.
Yeah,
but I remember the doctor...
have to shoot the stone out of my pee hole, and everything's fine. Totally
exactly. Yeah, see how loud the scream is. So it was a male doctor who was dealing with me in the emergency room, and he comes in and he says, you know, the size of it, you know, we're concerned if it's 5 or 6 millimeters, yours was 3, blah, 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 blah. I said, yeah. I said, talking about the pain. He said, yeah, they say it's worse than childbirth. I said, dude, we have no right to comment on that, okay? That's something I would never say publicly, and we as men cannot comment on that. We would have to go to a woman who has passed a kidney stone and given birth, and we happen to have one right here in Jesse. So, Jesse, answer the age-old question that guys seem to like to say, that passing a kidney stone is worse than childbirth. You've done both. Which is worse?
Yeah, childbirth is worse, and I got an epidural for childbirth. So I didn't even get to the peak amount of pain that you can feel during childbirth. I got like a little bit of the way there and was like, numb me from the waist down. Nobody's getting numbed from the waist down to pass their kidney stone. Did you say 3
I would like
millimeters?
to get numb from the waist down for that.
Okay, but 3 millimeters is what we're talking about. Do we need to talk about how big a baby is?
I mean, exactly. I don't know how 3 millimeters can cause that much pain, but then go to 7 or 8 pounds. Okay? I mean, I couldn't believe the doctor even said that. Thank God there wasn't a woman in the room who had actually given birth, but I was like, dude, we have no right there. So
it's just one of those things where you're like, I just don't know. How do we, pain is pain is relative, but like, how are we even comparing them? Like, again, they say it's worse than childbirth. It's like, just pick another thing. Just be like, it's agony. It's worse than getting shot in the stomach. It's worse than being stabbed. But like, why do we have to go back to the childbirth thing?
No.
It's so true. It's like when they put up the measurements for sounds in stadium, and they're like, this stadium sound is currently louder than a jet engine or louder than something, like a plane taking off. Yeah. We need a different version of that for the kidney stone metric, because we're going to go ahead and take childbirth and we're going to set it off to the side over here. It's no longer part of the applausometer when it comes to pain, even for something as severe as a kidney stone. So if you're watching the Emmitt Smith interview today and you're wondering, wow, Mike Golic Sr. seems like he should be there with a guy that he once played against. My father was doubled over in pain in a hospital with a morphine drip, trying to make sure that the little stone in his tummy didn't cause any more damage. And now I find out that this is hereditary, and this is apparently something that I've got to look forward to. Yes. So thanks for this. I got male pattern baldness from my mom's side of the family, and now I'm getting kidney stones from your side of the family. I don't know what kind of weird karma I got from the past, but the chickens are coming home to roost, Bobby Boucher.
Let me tell you what, I did. I'm not going to lie, I chuckled when I said, my brother Greg gets them. And he goes, oh, yeah, they're hereditary. I immediately thought of all you and Jake and Sydney. And I'm not going to lie, I chuckled to myself. Not that I wish the pain on you, but, nowadays, you get drugs for it, you pass it, and you're fine. This isn't a life-threatening thing. So there was a part of me that chuckled a little bit, waiting to hear, oh, my God, my back hurts, I can't move. And I'm just going to go, you got a kidney stone. You're welcome.
Jake didn't get the male pattern baldness, so maybe the kidney stones will skip you, GoJo. And Jake will get them.
Yeah, Jake's fighting the good fight on that front
kind of
really?
leaning that way. But I am bummed I missed Emmitt, though. I mean, that was right in the sweet. I tried to come home, and I tried to wait to do the interview, and then I was going to go to the emergency room, and I swear I was just on my hands and knees on the floor, and your mother's like, we got to, you can't do an interview like this, so we got to go. So I'm bummed, because Emmitt, I can't wait to hear that. Emmitt's such a good dude, and we've been friends for a long time. One of the hardest running backs I have ever played against, so I look forward to that.
We'll hear if he ever almost did an interview while passing a kidney stone and find out how tough the guy really is. That being said, speaking of medical marvels and things of that nature, let's get to 3 for Thursday. We want to hit a few NFL topics. And really, this is like bacon wrapping 1 for Thursday, because we got to have the Aaron Rodgers conversation. Yeah. We've done Aaron Rodgers watch every week on this show for the last God knows how many weeks, and now have gotten to the point where Aaron Rodgers, Jesse, apparently is back actually doing this. So what do we got? Yeah, guys, we've opened the 21-day practice window for Aaron Rodgers. Unbelievable stuff here. I told you this was going to happen. You guys were like, it's not going to happen. Here he is. All right. I've said this the whole time. This man is proving a point. He will be back on this field. You guys were like, there's no way. The Jets suck. Guess what? 21-day practice window is open. So let's hear what Robert Saleh had to say about the whole thing.
Like a lot of guys coming off, they're usually not ready to play football. There's still a little bit of health concern there. And so, you use these 21-day windows to see where they're at. So we're so far away from that. But like I said, the mindset for this is more of a progression in his rehab. And like I said, he's been cleared for functional football activity. He's not cleared to fully play football. And, it's, like I said, part of his rehab progression.
Okay, and obviously, it's not like the Jets are doing so well that it's like, oh God, if we get Aaron Rodgers back, here we go. But Rodgers likes to go on Pat McAfee and talk about how he's feeling and everything. So let's just hear from him and see what he had to say about his whole situation.
Well, I think it's always been first, am I healthy? And then are we alive? Are we in it? Are we playing good enough to make a run? Can I step in and protect myself and play at the level that I feel like I'm capable of playing?
Guys, I swear to God, this man is going to play in a football game this year to prove a point.
Jesse.
To prove a point.
You just heard him say the quiet part out loud there. This is the perfect sweet spot for Aaron Rodgers right now because we are all going to ooh and ah at how impressive this is. And it is. We've talked about it. The mindset that it took to get here, the dedication that it took to get here, all of these things incredibly worthy of praise in this process. And now back on the field wearing the red practice jersey, we get all these shots of him like we were getting before the game, and he gets to say, I did what you guys told me modern medicine wasn't capable of. And then now that they go through this evaluation period, they're going to sit back and look at the 4-7 Jets whose offensive line struggled all year and go, nope. And then he's going to go promptly back to working out and getting ready for the offseason. Dad, I don't know if you see it any different, but this seems like the perfect sweet spot win for Aaron.
100% agree. Jesse, to your point, she has done it. And so let's focus on that and tunnel in on that and say what he's done has been incredible. All right, I think the last time we talked about something this amazing was Adrian Peterson coming back from an ACL in like 7 months. And it made everybody go, God, can everybody do this? No, everybody can't do it. Everybody heals at a different rate. And Aaron Rodgers put every possible thing he could into it. And that doesn't mean others don't as well, but some heal better. There's the different surgery now for the Achilles. And he did have something to say for those that are saying he didn't have a tear in his Achilles at all that I really can't say on this program. So what he has done to put himself in this position is nothing short of amazing. Between modern technology of how we treat this injury and then his attacking the rehab the way he did. It is 11 weeks after surgery. 11 weeks. And he's out there on that field doing that. He's in the 21-day window. Okay, that said, Aaron, incredible what you have done. I mean, mind-blowing what you have done. There is no way he's getting on that field. Zero. If I were the Jets, I would hide every available extra helmet there is so he can't get on the field. There is zero need for him to get on the field. Because this team is not in it. They're 4-7 and going the wrong way. They have a game against Atlanta, who is leading their division right now. We'll see what happens in it. But this shouldn't be if there's a minuscule part of a chance. This should be is if we are well on our way into the playoffs and we are going to be in the postseason and we are looking like a good team. They are not. That he has proven so many people wrong who doubted him already just by the video we saw yesterday on the field. Absolutely incredible. I would not let him anywhere near live action until next September.
He is going to step onto this field for he's a lunatic. He's crazy. He's trying to prove a point. He believes that his mind can transcend medicine. He believes that his mind can make his body just do things. I swear to God, this man is going to play a snap of a football game. If he goes out there for one snap, he's going to do it.
I do agree with your point that Aaron Rodgers is absolutely trying to prove a point with this.
Yes.
I think there's no doubt about that. I think we're probably going to end up hearing more about that than we'd like to at some point. But part of me says, listen, at this point, given what's gone on, like every athlete that you have talked to, every person that you've talked to that's been around sports and seen this kind of injury is looking up at this going, there's just no way. It's like seeing the boogeyman right now walk back in. It's that meme, how are you still alive? Like God giving his toughest battle to Aaron's Achilles, his strongest soldier, apparently. So I still at the end of the day think, and you kind of heard Rob Saleh talk about it there, the things that he's doing in practice are so far from live game speed. And I get it's 3 weeks time. His doctor's monitoring this from the West Coast. He's back out now in New York full-time with the team, and so he's going to be doing more of this. This is just an extension of the rehab process. But I just think, like, again, barring an unforeseen run from the Jets where all of a sudden they're knocking on the door of the AFC playoff picture, and at 4-7, I just don't really see how that's possible given the other teams they'd be going up against in this.
No, you're making a lot of sense. You're making sense. You're saying things that make sense. I'm just telling you.
See, he wants, and Jesse, I agree with you. He wants to, but ultimately it's going to be the team's decision. Now, is he adamant? Is he going to say, I don't want to play here next year if you don't let me go out and play a series? I doubt it gets to that. I think ultimately it's going to be up to the team and say, what you've done is miraculous, but you're not going out there. And would it end, Mike, the discussion if they lose to Atlanta this week? Atlanta, leading the NFC South right now. The worst part of the Jets defense, one of the Jets players saying we're going to have an historic defense. Unfortunately, the Atlanta defense by yards is statistically higher than the Jets defense. And the worst part of the Jets defense is they give up 140 yards on the ground. That's one of the worst in the league. And you got the two-headed monster of Algier and Bijan Robinson, who they need to start letting touch the ball even more than they have. So this could be tough against that Jet defense. And we know the Jet offense isn't very good at all. So this could end everything. You're 4-8. I mean, that's got to end the discussion. Now, I know you have time. He's got the 21-day window, so he still has a couple of more weeks. But I got to believe this could be the last nail in the coffin for him.
The Jets are not making the playoffs. I can say that very comfortably right now. Sign, seal, and deliver that. And so, if the Jets are not making the playoffs, I still don't think that. And listen, maybe they'll put this on the rip for Aaron Rodgers when he finally gets back out on the field and they can run the supercut of all the gas bags being wrong. And Jessie can have her moment in the sun where she points and reminds us that we're trying to judge a person whose motivation we cannot clearly define. It's like the gem thief or whatever from The Dark Knight Rises. So, I know this is supposed to be 3 for Thursday. We're probably only going to get to 2 for Thursday. Yep. So, Jesse, we have angry Brandon Staley. Is that the other thing we're supposed to get to in this?
Yeah, another 4-17 Chargers in the basement of the AFC West here. Tensions really boiling over. Brandon Staley is getting testy with reporters once again. So he had some back and forth with them about the Quentin Johnson rib injury, saying why he's not returning him. It's not because of a lack of confidence. It's not because of any other part of your imagination. It was a rib injury, okay? Your ribs affect how you breathe, okay? He plays a position where you have to reach in order to catch things, so it affects the position, and so he was cleared to go back in the game, but there was apprehension on my part of putting him back in there until he felt good enough, and that is the storyline. So, he's fine. He feels good. He's feeling normal. So let's discuss this, guys. Is this the end of the line for Brandon Staley? Will he finally be fired if he loses to the lowly Patriots?
I certainly think so. Now, I don't think they're going to lose to the Patriots is the complicated part. I think Brandon Staley is going to finish out the season ultimately because there's enough time like this, but Dad, this is honestly kind of refreshing because the response is deeply human. If we were sitting around every week having this existential dread about our future and the job and the organization, and you're the subject of sports talk media all the time, this is probably how most of us would act. This is a high-stress environment already with what you do with the job, and Brandon Staley is responding the way 99% of humans would. The response we get from most athletes and coaches who are able to see and withstand all of this from the outside and somehow go forward is superhuman. We need to appreciate that more because this is far more the response that we should get. And at least in this case, it's in defense of one of his players. I do appreciate, and I'm sure his locker room does, him going to bat for one of their rookies who's no doubt struggled this year and had to deal with the comparison to guys like Zay Flowers who got picked a pick before him in the draft. So I actually appreciate where this comes from in defense of one of their young guys.
Yeah, I mean, a locker room always appreciates when a coach, whether it's a head coach or another coach being interviewed, backs their player or gives a reason that supports the player, has nothing to do with the play. It's the injury. He's trying to protect him. He's got to stretch up for a ball, and it's a rib injury. So I get all that. But, I mean, he just seems like he's getting close to the end of his rope, too, dealing with all this. I mean, because everybody is just kind of firing at it. Even Tony Romo. Did you hear what Tony Romo said on the broadcast?
I did.
Tony Romo said, I could, at least this is what I saw, that he could call the game and still call plays better than the plays that are being called by the Chargers out there. I mean, it's been rough. And I think everybody believes it's going to be the end, and we keep wondering, is it going to be during the season or not? But As we've always said, we never would call for anybody's head. It's not like we enjoy talking about it. But as we've also said, 4 to 7 jobs are available every year in the NFL. That's how it works. And it seems this is going to be one of those jobs. And I do think it'll be a job that's very appealing to a coach because of the quarterback and the potential that you have, as opposed to some of the other jobs that are going to be available. Yeah, I don't think they're going to lose to the Patriots either. Malik Cunningham has taken some snaps behind Bailey Zappi. Now, I'd love to see Malik Cunningham go out there and see what he can do. How about they also auditioned 5 kickers after their kicker last week missed, who was it, Chad Ryland, missed that field goal to tie the game. So 5 kickers that they auditioned. So it's you want to talk as bad in San Diego or Los Angeles, even uglier, obviously, in New England.
Yeah, I think your point about the sexiness of that job come this offseason, we know already the Raiders have made a change, the Panthers have made a change, and if the Chargers do, that instantly vaults to the top of that because you're walked in and handed immediately one of the premier talents at the quarterback position in the NFL. And no disrespect to Bryce Young, who's got potential and reality, 2 very different things still. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Riley Leonard, Duke quarterback, has entered the portal on Wednesday, the transfer portal. And guys, immediately became one of the most talented QBs available in the transfer market. Now, he only played in 7 games this season, missing time because of that toe injury. But he's going to be one of the most sought-after QBs in the country. However, based on these comments by Matt Rule, Nebraska may not be one of his suitors.
A good quarterback in the portal costs, $1 million to $1.5 million to $2 million right now. So just on the same page, right? So let's make sure we all understand what's happening. So there's some teams that have $6 or $7 million players playing for them. So we just kind of believe in doing things like the old school way, the hard way, building. But that doesn't mean we won't look at people in the portal. We did it last year, right? It just means They have to be clearly an impact player for us if they're like a one-year player, or they have to be someone that has multiple years to get in our program and develop.
Guys, there's a rumor that Notre Dame could be a possible destination.
Yeah, we will get to that as the potential for the Notre Dame ACC pipeline grows with Riley Leonard's name in addition to the portal. And you know what? I'm curious for the reception of that, right? Because, Dad, this is a different time where now it feels like we've got pseudo free agency at the end of a lot of these college football seasons. And I do wonder for Nebraska fans what the reaction is to hearing that from their head coach in Matt Rule, who I have a lot of respect for, who at the college level has done a lot in building and revitalizing programs like Temple and Baylor. But when you hear something like that, I think that used to be a good sell to fan bases, that old school mentality of, hey, we're going to build this thing the right way, and we want to bring our guys, and we want multiple recruiting cycles to develop the high school guys here, versus what fans see now, which is how quickly you can jumpstart a program if you're willing to go out there and play ball at that position. And so what that sounded like, Dad, was, hey, we're not going to be in the bidding war market for these high-end college quarterbacks. I wonder how that's received by Nebraska fans right now and for other teams that might be looking at the landscape and opting out to some extent, saying, we're not going to be players on that level of this, spending 7 figures on a college quarterback when we believe we can go in high school and develop our guy.
Well, I think two things. I think you can do it both ways, but the way Matt Rule's saying that, and if that's your belief, and you can still build a team that way, my thought is welcome to the middle or lower part of the pack. That's where you're going to be, right? I mean, the landscape has changed, and you have to change with it. And also, and I don't know, I wasn't there, but we always know head coaches have an agenda when they're at the microphone. Was that also a hey, we need our alumni to step up with the collective. We need more money. You know, we can't compete unless we can start paying these guys. Was that part of what he was? And again, I don't know, but as we've all said, and we all know, coaches have an agenda when they're up there. I don't know what their collective is. I don't know the money that they have. I don't know how they're spending it. But this is the landscape we're in now. So if you want to compete at the highest level, you still have to recruit. It's the bloodline of everything. But as we have talked to coaches, we have now heard it used to be 24, 25 high school seniors. Now it's can be 12 and 12. It's where we are, whether it's a guy coming in for 1 year from the portal or, like Matt said, multiple years of the portal. That's where the recruiting is now. And I've heard coaches talk at different high school places and say, listen, not as many of you are going to get scholarships. You're just not, because there are proven players on the field who want to transfer to a different school that we're going to take over you because they have proven they can play already and their instant experience on the field. So this is where we are right now. So I guess that makes me wonder. And listen, Nebraska is a phenomenal school. You would think that there would be the collective there. Maybe it is there, and they're just choosing not to spend, which in today's world I think is a bit of a mistake. Or, as I said, that was kind of a, hey, we need money if we want to compete.
And because that's interesting, we've seen some coaches be way less coy about that, who have basically gotten up and said, hey, if you want us to be able to compete with a lot of these other teams, especially teams that play in the SEC or the Big Ten, we need you to give more. We need a war chest to be able to go out here and buy some of the players that we've got on the market right now. And so there could absolutely be some of that because, again, I just... in the interest of always measuring the temperature of your fan base and trying to build momentum around the program, it does seem like something that sort of lands with a dull thud when you hear, we're not going to do that. Just so you're clear, this is how much a quarterback costs, and it does not sound like Nebraska. And maybe it's just this current class of quarterbacks, because he mentioned it's got to be someone that comes in as an instant impact player. There's got to be stuff that makes sense. To the Notre Dame and Riley Leonard rumors that we heard about yesterday, was pretty much every major reporting outlet I saw said key keep an eye on Notre Dame here. I believe Riley Leonard entered the transfer portal with the do not contact designation, basically meaning that he already felt like he had a home looking, a place that he was looking at as far as a next home. And Dad, it makes sense, right? Two academic schools. I always said the nerd schools kind of stick together. For Notre Dame in a football sense, you've got a couple of players currently on the roster. Steve Angeli was the direct backup this last year. But you're looking at a void of talent, or I should say a lack of depth, and certainly veteran depth there. And so at the very least, bringing in Riley Leonard, if you want to frame it, because remember, Sam Hartman was framed as a competition last year with Tyler Buckner, who had only played a handful of games in his Notre Dame career before going into that spring competing against Sam. But he's a more mobile quarterback who, behind Notre Dame offensive line that's going to lose its best offensive lineman and best running back, certainly can help everybody involved. There's a number of things that seem to fit well in that situation, Dad, that maybe you can't fully discount in this current bidding war and marketplace for college players. You've still got to believe that that person's a right fit for your team.
Yeah, you do. And I'm kind of intrigued with Steve Angeli and what he can do. I like his arm. So we'll see. I'd like to ask you about Riley Leonard. Listen, Duke was having a year. They played Notre Dame. They lost to Notre Dame. I mean, right at the end of the game, Riley Leonard hurt his ankle and missed a couple of games. Then he hurt his toe and missed games, only played 7 games. So really, if you want to look at the full year, go the year before that, where he completed, about 64% of his passes, 20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. But he also ran for 13 touchdowns. This dude is like a running back that you want to be able to throw. I wonder where our passing attack, Notre Dame's passing attack, will go. It started out well with Sam, and then it certainly hit some dry spells. Notre Dame has had 2 wide receivers, Chris Tyree and Tobias Merriweather, already entered the transfer portal. Their wide receiver coach at Notre Dame has been let go. So there's some things going on in flux at that wide receiver position for the passing game for Notre Dame. And we know they always have an excellent running game, but you'd love to mix in a passing game there. And can Riley Leonard be that guy? We know he can run. We know we'll get in the end zone running the ball. But can he be that passing threat that Notre Dame needs as well?
I think he can, because when you got a quarterback who can affect the game with his legs, everything becomes easier. Ground game becomes easier. Passing game becomes easier. He was the secret sauce for everything that Duke did in that offense. And you mentioned they were inches away from beating Notre Dame in that game. They were, until Riley Leonard got hurt, even playing on a beat-up ankle against Florida State, very close and beating Florida State for a lot of that game and looking like they were in the driver's seat for that one. And the receiving core at Duke had some good veteran players in it, but by no means the highest end talent. I think Notre Dame's got a portal at receiver this year. I think you've got some promising young guys that showed up this year. Jaden Greathouse, Rico Flores, a bunch of those dudes. But you've got to portal some veteran experience in there. And that goes back to the overall message of this, Dad, going back. Because I think, Riley Leonard can be a really strong fit for Notre Dame. Phenomenal athlete, very good quarterback right now. Basketball athlete, all those things. And so as he continues to develop and get older, I think that can help the passing attack, and I think the passing attack can help continue to develop him. But I think this all is about, too, the message it sends, right? Notre Dame fans saw that yesterday and went, all right, we're trying. We're going out there and we're trying to do something. It gives you hope for the next year. And I do wonder for programs that hear that kind of comment, and I'm not doing this as an indictment of Matt Rule or Nebraska. I think better days are ahead with him there. But as far as motivating your fan base, motivating your donor base, and hearing, that's what a quarterback costs, and then this tepid endorsement that sounds like we're not going to go there, how is that received by a fan base? Kind of like we talk about owners being willing to spend in pro sports, Dad. Are you willing to show fans that you're trying?
Are you in it? And the landscape has unbelievably changed. Are you all the way in it? If not, good luck. It's going to be a struggle.
And everybody gets to make that choice right now. We're going to see more and more teams make that clear publicly soon.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic, everybody. College football conference championships will be decided this weekend, okay? And as we've been digging around on the DK Sportsbook, one of the most fascinating markets that we have found is Iowa's team totals in the Big Ten championship game versus Michigan. This is pretty hysterical. The Hawkeyes team total for the first half is listed at 0.5. Now their second half total is up to a whopping 2.5. You heard that right. Their over-under is basically 1 point for both halves, guys. Michigan leads the nation, allowing just 10.3 points per game, but the books are not confident enough in Iowa for them to get a field goal each half. So, I mean, here's Iowa head coach about trying to keep the game close going into the fourth quarter against Michigan this weekend.
Part of it is that's out of necessity because we don't get way ahead too often. It doesn't happen much. It's just kind of the way it's been for 25 plus 9 years. And then and that's the beauty of football. But the challenge this week's going to be to get it in that fourth quarter, where it is competitive. And at least we've had experience at that, and that may be one of their downsides. They haven't had a lot of that experience. Although, obviously the last 3 weeks they've been in some pretty good ball games too. So, but they've got a lot of them where they just, hit the gas and went. And, if you don't have a respect for their ability and their talent and the way they play, that can happen to you real fast. So the first thing we have to do is try to get it to the fourth quarter, and then we have to find out a way to win it.
Coach Kirk's, just not sugarcoating things out here. Guys, can Iowa score any points against this Michigan defense? What do we think? The books don't think so.
See, you guys are thinking about it the wrong way. Iowa's not going to score points against the Michigan defense, but Iowa's defense can absolutely score you some points here. Lest we not forget, the Iowa touchdown is two safeties and a field goal. So that is absolutely possible in this game. And if you're just looking to get over 1 point, I do believe that the defense is capable of that. But, Dad, we've been no reason to believe an offense that's already on its backup quarterback, who's a certified hoss that I love watching play, but is not necessarily equipped to go out there and score points against this defense. So this is going to be a struggle.
Yeah, they have had 12 interceptions, that defense. I'm sorry. I agree. That's their only shot, Iowa, is their defensive side of the ball. And I have never seen totals that low for each half to not even say they can get a field goal. That absolutely blows my mind. And unfortunately, I probably agree with it. It's tough to say as long as you mentioned, the defense doesn't get involved for Iowa and they can keep them at bay a little bit. I'm trying to see really quick. They have 10 interceptions and they have recovered, I think, 5 or 6 fumbles. So that's what you have to rely on here. But you're going to get a heavy dose of Corum, the running back who has 900 rushing touchdowns this year. They're just going to control. This could be an unbelievably fast game because I think Michigan is just going to hammer. That's what they do. And I'll give Iowa the enough to say I think they can get a field goal out of this. I think maybe a turnover can switch the field. That's what you're looking for is field position so that offense doesn't have to go a long way to put points on the board. Or, like you said, their defense actually getting a pick six or scoop and score, something like that. But this is every bit the 22, 23-point spread that we see.
Yeah, this game is going to get put off to the side on what's an otherwise very exciting weekend of conference championship games. And it's interesting because this game is the polar opposite of what we've had all year in college football. Dad, I don't know if you saw this note yesterday. Michael Mulvihill, the inside analytics guy over at Fox Sports, put out the tweet yesterday that across college football, the 2023 regular season was the most watched of all time across all networks. 151.9 billion minutes of viewing, with Army-Navy still to add a little bit more to that total as a technical regular season game. And, Dad, I'm curious for your thoughts on this because I was thinking yesterday and got asked a lot yesterday about why we think that was the case this year for college football and what it means for the sport going forward. Because I look at the why for this year, like why do we get this year? It's a combination of a few things. One, I think football at any level is always easiest to sell when you've got quarterbacks to sell. And I think when you looked across the sport this year, we've talked about the depth of quarterback talent at this level. It's not to say that they're all going to be NFL stars, but we looked out in the Pac-12 and we saw Bo Nix and Caleb Williams, the defending Heisman Trophy winner, and Michael Penix Jr., and even going to DJ Uiagalelei at Oregon State. You had dudes out there. We just talked about Riley Leonard potentially transferring to Notre Dame, trying to succeed Sam Hartman, and all the joy around South Bend, the fact that they had a name brand value quarterback at that position for the first time in a long time. And, hubba hubba, having a quarterback that was pretty easy on the eyes for a lot of people wearing the gold helmet. But it did a lot for that. Like, I think part of the reason you're getting a guy like Riley Leonard looking at Notre Dame now, and the fact that Notre Dame is a viable transfer destination, is because you saw proof of concept. Look at how popular Sam Hartman, the brand, became in addition to the quarterback being able to have success. So you had that there. You had other name brands around the country. Jaden Daniels and what he's done at LSU. Jalen Milroe's rise during this season. You had that in conjunction, Dad, with I think you hitting home runs on all the big games by and large on your schedule this fall. Think about going back early in the season. Texas and Alabama earlier in the year hit a home run. Notre Dame and Ohio State coming right down to the wire with plenty of juicy high-stakes drama there. Washington and Oregon. Everywhere you looked, the big games that we had circled on the calendar preseason actually delivered. And so I think that combination of quarterbacks and big brand names hitting in all the games you were looking for created the perfect storm for this. And it's the perfect springboard into the world of college football that TV executives are trying to build, quite honestly.
While I agree with everything you said, I also will say football always gets the benefit of the doubt. Always, because it's the most popular sport out there. Look at the NFL. I think going into last weekend, we had 50 different quarterbacks start a game. 50. So you even had some of the, top, not Patrick Mahomes, but some top quarterbacks out. We've seen backups. We've seen third stringers. If Joe Flacco gets into Cleveland, that'll be 4 starters they've had. And it's still watched. And I think college football will always be watched, and it can add to it when you add name value of school, when you add quarterback. I get it. But I think it's always going to be turned on, and it's always going to be watched.
But I agree, but to this height, like the reason it's going above and beyond, like to your point, I wouldn't be surprised if some NFL ratings relative to their own monstrous success were a little down. I heard the guys on Lebitard talking about it, and I was the same way this past weekend. I didn't watch the Red Zone channel during the 1 o'clock window. I turned on Jags Texans, and I just hung out with that one because the rest of it was backup quarterbacks going into games where they weren't going to win and guys that were just getting their first start that week. And it took a lot of the juice out of a lot of those matchups. And so conversely in college football, I think you didn't also have a dominant team this year, which I think helped. It didn't feel like there was one final big bad boss that everybody was worried about. And so you had more good teams deeper, longer than ever before. And I think all of that relative to what we see in the NFL with the backup quarterback grinder is a reason why, yes, it's normally very watched, but this year went above and beyond.
Yeah, and I'll be interested in the NFL ratings because I think they're still going to be just as good because it's football. And college, I mean, remember when NIL started and the portal was going crazy, everybody said, oh, college football is changing. It's never going to be what it was. And you're right, it's better. It's better. It's being watched by more people. It's not going to be affected. And it goes to the 12-team playoff. I'm sorry, it's not going to be affected. It's still going to be watched. Now, will an Ohio State and Michigan game be different? We had Cardale Jones, the former quarterback of Ohio State. He is worried about the magnitude of that because now we've gone to the fact that we make it Ohio State, Michigan to possibly 3 times in a year instead of just the one. So the magnitude of some games could be down, but I think they're still going to be watched. And it'd be very, very difficult to dent college or the NFL football as far as spectators.
So this has been talked about as the perfect springboard year into the 12-team playoff because you had so many teams good for so long. We talked about at certain points there were more teams that were undefeated at that point in the season than any time even going back to the BCS era. But, Dad, this is also the year that TV executives are going, this is exactly why we've seen the Pac-12 broken up, why the Big Ten and the SEC are glutting all of these talented brand names, because all of the changes that you mentioned, all the watchability, that's about the casual eyeball. The true diehard diehard fan is going to suffer with some of these regional rivalries going away, with Ohio State, Michigan being played potentially 3 times during the course of the season. It's not good for the health of the sport in that way for the diehards, but the people making these decisions have never cared about the diehards. It's been about, can we get a mass amount of eyeballs on this? And as we saw this season, big brand name helmets together for games that are close because of some of the talent jockeying around in the portal created the kind of numbers that have driven all of the decision making around the sport lately.
Back to GoJo and Golic. We are only 12 weeks through their first NFL seasons, but there's been a drastic difference in success between CJ Stroud and Bryce Young. And it's already led people to ask the Young versus Stroud question, who was the better pick, okay? And Panthers owner David Tepper threw fuel on that fire by firing Frank Reich after just 11 games. But Tepper says he stands by Carolina's decision to go Young over Stroud.
All those decisions, whether it was a head coach, whether it was Bryce, I don't really vote on those decisions until the last piece. Okay, so those decisions are made by, in the case of by the football people, and in the case of Bryce, it was almost, I believe, it was a unanimous decision on the coaches and the scouts, and very strong opinions at the time. We are totally confident in that pick. Okay, I think the people that made that pick first, would be totally confident in that. Some of them you could ask, okay? And I think and for me, I'm totally confident in agreeing with that pick.
Guys, is it too early to make an assessment on this, or is it kind of like, okay, David Tepper?
Well, the thing that was missing in that also was that he said originally they thought they were going to trade up to 2 and take C.J. Stroud there because they thought Houston was going to take Bryce Young at number 1 in that spot, which was the comment that launched 1,000 ships in this, Dad, was him introducing the idea that, oh yeah, we thought we were going to get C.J. Stroud if we moved up to 2 because we thought Bryce Young was going to be taken at number 1, which can read like a compliment in a certain way that, yeah, he was always your guy. But but that you always thought Bryce Young was going to be the number one pick. But just even saying the name in conjunction with the quarterback that he's going to be forever compared to, and right now in not a great way, Dad, it just felt like a drastic overshare from a guy in David Tepper who cannot seem to not insert himself in the situation.
Well, I mean, you know how that's going to work. You're going to back the guy you picked. I mean, what was he going to do? Come out and say, no, this wasn't the guy we wanted?
Oh, no, I'm saying he backed him, but he also kind of inadvertently said that, yeah, we thought we were going to get C.J. Stroud if we were picking it too. And I don't know, between that and all the thirst videos from back in the day at Stroud's Pro Day of Frank Reich and the quarterback coach both talking to C.J. like he was going to be in town, I don't know, that part of it to me just seemed a little bit unnecessary.
I love how he says you can ask some of them, meaning you can't ask Frank Reich, but you can ask Scott Fitterer, our GM, who is going to back, Bryce Young as well. Listen, at the end of the day, it's too early, right? It's too early to tell. C.J. Stroud is having a much better year, without question. We went over yesterday their different weapons that they both have. Stroud, Bryce Young has struggled. He looks fidgety in the pocket. He's been sacked more times, 40 times to 26. Now, when you're a young quarterback, you hold on to the ball because in college, where you'd have a little more wide open receivers when you're playing at the big time schools, you can get rid of the ball a little easier, knowing your window's a little bigger. That shrinks a lot in the NFL, and a split second of hesitation is going to end up being a sack a lot of times. But I still think it's too early to tell. So let's wait and see who the next coach is going to be. Because that's what you're hiring now. You're hiring a coach to develop your young quarterback. That's the only thing that should be on the mind of whoever is going to hire, and it ends with Tepper, we know that, of who you're going to hire. It's got to be about the progression of Bryce Young. And that's what's going to be interesting to me, Mike, because we know the jobs that are going to be available. We already have the Raiders. We have Carolina. Everybody thinks the Chargers. Will Washington be available? Is Belichick going to be done in New England and go somewhere else? What's the two things you look at if you're a potential coach? Owner and quarterback, right? I mean, that's what you look at. And right now, when you're looking at a young quarterback, okay, I can develop him, but the owner I'm not too ecstatic about. For as quickly as he pulls the trigger on something and the lack of patience that he has, that will make it interesting on who they're going to get. If it's going to be a seasoned veteran coach who maybe has choices, I don't know if Carolina is going to be one of the top choices, in all honesty.
I mean, I would think if it's a young coach that's on the come up who's got options and choices, see Ben Johnson, who they've talked about in Detroit.
Yes.
That's the one I'd think. Why would you go here and waste one of your first opportunities on trying to be a head coach in an organization that's proved infertile grounds, unstable land? That's what the Carolina Panthers look like right now. They don't have a first-round pick next year because of what they did trading in the draft last year to help get Bryce Young. And so, there's not a lot of appeal there, Dad. And it seems like this organization is well on their way to screwing up a really good quarterback that we saw coming out of college. Because whatever people want to say now in revisionist history, the delta between C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young is not this. Like, they are not that. No. Like, C.J. Stroud is a great talent and physically might have a few more things in the arsenal than Bryce did. But they're not this far apart as players and never have been, which is your reminder that most of the time in the NFL, when your quarterback fails as a first rounder in the team, it's more on the team. Because you look around at Bryce Young and, Dad, even if you get a competent coach in there, you're really going to have to do some overhauling and nail some young draft picks at wide receiver. But you got wide receiver that you got to fix because you got no one getting open. And you got offensive line that you got to fix because guys aren't getting blocked up front and he's being pressured at an unholy rate right now. And to your point about some of the things he's done as a player, those are bad habits that I think are just as much a result of your environment as anything else. And how you go in and rewire from this point becomes extremely difficult. We're watching right now Justin Fields. There's still flashes of talent in Chicago, but he's been through multiple coaching staffs at this point, and he's had to learn on a fly with an offense that's just now getting weapons and protection that are suitable for an NFL quarterback, and all of that means the systems are failing these quarterbacks once again.
I think what people also have to realize is what some get caught up in. They say, well, wait a minute, look what Stroud is doing. This team is in playoff contention. This is an exception, not the rule. Normally, when you get a quarterback going that high, it's a bad team, and that team will struggle. Now, maybe one win, okay, maybe that's struggling more than you think, but still, for the most part, that team is going to struggle probably still for a couple of years as you're building around that quarterback. But a lot of times owners get impatient, and we may have the most impatient one in Carolina when they say, well, they're doing it. They're doing it in Houston now with a rookie head coach, and a rookie quarterback. Why can't we be doing that? And that can be fool's gold. Again, that's the exception, not the rule. The rule is, at the top, a quarterback gets picked and goes on a bad team, and there are growing pains depending on how long it takes you to build around that quarterback. And you're seeing more the norm in Carolina of the growing pains of what actually happens when you take a quarterback that high. Just the same thing that will happen when Caleb Williams goes number 1 out of SC, and I do believe he's going to come out and go number 1. I do not think he's going back. I know we'll have that discussion. I think he's going to come out in the draft, and he'll go to a team, whether it's the Bears, whether it's maybe Arizona, if they're going to take a quarterback, and that team will struggle for a bit.
Well, I see. This is what I was going to say is it's hard to see a light at the end of the tunnel for the Carolina Panthers. Based on the last few weeks with Chicago, it's starting to get a little bit easier because you look at, hey, what are some of the differences in the C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young situation? Protection's one of them. And right now, the Chicago Bears offensive line over this stretch starting to look like it's coming together. The Darnell Wright pick looks good. If you can keep Tevin Jenkins healthy, he's played really good football. Like, I watched a lot of that Vikings game against the pressure packages from Brian Flores and said at the beginning, all right, Justin Fields, some good response to pressure, but also, man, the line held up better than I was expected. And now you've got a little bit of talent in the running back room, and you've got DJ Moore, who looks like a 1 at wide receiver right now. And so there are some things that you can afford a rookie quarterback, if it's Caleb Williams that you're bringing in there, that I think Carolina was not able to provide to Bryce Young in year 1, and usually most organizations aren't. The other example I always think of, Dad, is Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, who, wasn't protected at all and had to overcome that, but had the defense on the other side that was accountable and had 2 wide receivers and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase that were bona fide studs.
That's exactly right. So it begins to be the pieces because, as we know, on a quarterback rookie contract, that's when you have the time to spend money and build around. So not only do we have to see what Carolina does with a head coach, but how are they going to build around? As I mentioned, far and away, I think double the catches, Adam Thielen, a 32-year-old wide receiver, is the main guy in Carolina. And I love Adam Thielen. I think he's a heck of a player, but that can't be your main guy. You got to have more than that. So let's see what else they do around Bryce Young, because there's no way I'm going to sit there and say, oh, that's a bust pick. That's just not going to work. That's crazy. It's way, way, way too early to tell that.
Way too early to tell, and I think if you're trying to assign blame in Carolina, you know the one name to do it with.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. It is time, once again, for a meeting of the fake NFL playoff selection committee with GoJo, Golic, and Yahoo's Jason Fitz. Now, through 12 weeks, here are the top teams in the NFL, as you can see. Now, I'm just going to toss it to you guys and let you select who would be on top of your rankings for, again, the fake NFL playoff selection committee.
Hey, I don't know why we have to throw the word fake in there.
Because it's fake. It's not real.
Why is it fake?
Because it is fake.
Say we're just proving
real.
the concept.
It's fake.
We're doing something, therefore it's real. I mean,
right.
that has value to us. I mean, feels like the fake thing's a little harsh.
It is a fake selection committee. You cannot just say that's like me saying I'm the president of the United States. Just because I say it doesn't mean it's true.
Congratulations. It's an honor to meet you, Madam President. We're happy to have you here on our show. It feels like you got more pressing business to attend to right now.
Yeah, I gotta go.
Question your priorities, but
we would back you. We wouldn't distance ourselves from you, okay, Tepper? I mean, seriously.
I'm not old enough to run for president. I'm just saying. So.
Oh, wow.
That is a fair point.
Okay.
That hits home.
Okay.
Well, speaking of olds, Jason Fitz is with us here again. You can check him out over at Yahoo Sports and also on Fox Sports Radio on the weekends there. And this is Jason's baby from back in the day, taking a look at the NFL through the lens of the College Football Playoff Committee. And Jason, we are, you and I did our College Football Playoff ranking show on Twitter Spaces this last Tuesday, the penultimate round. And we got to talk through a lot of the same things for people in the NFL side of things that don't understand how it works. College football's got this wonderful human committee that takes a look at things like head-to-head win, strength of schedule, and the resume you've accomplished so far, your offensive and defensive efficiencies, the eye test of what we've seen on the field, what you've got remaining, all these things factored into it, tied up into a little ball, and then trying to barf out a top four at the end of that entire thing to discuss the dance. So, Jason, starting with you, who do we look at and say right now, is there a consensus number one team in the NFL? Is it as simple as the Philadelphia Eagles have the best record and we put it aside? Because I saw yesterday ESPN's FPI had them ranked down at 9th. I believe according to DVOA right now, they're also 9th in DVOA after week 12. So is it as easy for you as Philadelphia has won the games even if they haven't looked great and they are the consensus number one team?
Yeah, I think it is, but here's where it's funny. The one metric that, we always talk about for the college football side is game control. And I think if there was a game control metric for the Eagles, it would not necessarily be a flattering metric. But they're 10-1. And you used to yell at me about this all the time. Like, at some point, record has to matter, right? So I feel like that's where we are. Just because everybody else at this point has at least 3 losses, that's enough of a difference that I still think Philly's clearly number one.
Well, in the NFL, record only matters, right? At least in college football, you can still have the debate of 4 undefeated teams who you think is better, 1-loss teams who you think is better, or even are there 1-loss teams better than undefeated teams? Here it's by record, and that's how you get ranked, and that's how you get seeded in the playoffs. So, yeah, while Philadelphia, we keep saying, hasn't looked like that championship team, all they do is keep winning. And that's all you need to do in the NFL, because we've seen 9-7 teams at the end of the regular season when there were 16 games reach the Super Bowl. So it doesn't matter. Just get it done, and they're finding ways. We saw down by 10 to Kansas City, down by Buffalo, by 10 to Buffalo, both at halftime, and come back and win. So they're finding ways to win. The bottom line is, who have they beaten in the last 3 weeks? They've taken care of their business.
Cowboys, Chiefs, and Bills. Like they've beaten they've beaten a murderer's row in the last. The only thing I'd say as far as concern, and I want to ask both you guys this, because I'd agree. Right now, I think based on body of work, based on what we just talked about there, they have to be number one ranked in this based on how we judge it. The thing I wonder if anyone's worried about is what we saw happen with Minnesota last year. Philadelphia is 7-1 in one-score games this year, and that tends to be something that evens out over time. A record in close games, especially if they come down to the wire, is not always a great way to be predictive about what's to come, and we saw that crash and burn with the Minnesota Vikings famously last year, who set the NFL's all-time record for how they did in one-score games. And so I do wonder wonder now, and I think, Jason, it feels different with Philadelphia because we've seen them put the ball through the basket as quickly as last year. It's all the same parts on offense. Now, defensively, we can start to ask some questions because that group has not harassed the quarterback as well, hasn't done a lot of things as well as they did during that Super Bowl run that they had last season. But right now, the underlying stuff in the one-score games might be a little worrisome. Point differential, all that stuff doesn't track the way a team that has this kind of record normally does.
Yeah, because I think last year the Vikings were a mirage. This year the Eagles got some things they need to tweak, and there's a difference in that nuance of that conversation. I think you're right about the defensive side of the ball, but again, we'll use a college football analogy. I've heard that a bunch about Georgia this year too, right? Georgia's defense hasn't quite gelled to get together the way the last couple of years have because the last couple of years have been fairly historic for them, right? So I think there is this moment of A, that'll come together throughout the course of it, but B, the fact that the Eagles are the Eagles, have been where they've been, you just sort of trust coach quarterback combo. And I don't want to sleep on this. Let's also acknowledge that the Eagles have done this with 2 new coordinators, which I think is, look at the difference a coordinator makes in Buffalo, right? And so you think about coordinators on both sides of the ball, what it means for Philly, even on the defensive side of the ball. I just think that's part of the adjustment. It feels like they're still tweaking things. I just think the concept that they have a problem is overblown when you're sitting at 10-1 and overall you're 2 games better than anybody else in the NFL.
I mean, listen, so consensus, we think they're number 1. And really think about it. Their last 3 wins, Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills. Now they play the 49ers, then the Cowboys again, and then the Seahawks. And we'll see how they do tonight against the Cowboys. So the schedule is tough. They only have 1 loss. So they're number 1. My number 2, it's just tough for me to go further than Patrick Mahomes. Not to say Kansas City. So it's Kansas City, but it's Patrick Mahomes. And while I still wonder at the wide receiver position, you have Travis Kelce, and then where are you going? Watson has been a guy now, Rashee Rice early on. So who is that guy? They've had a lot of drops, and those don't just suddenly disappear, though you certainly can improve upon that. But it's Patrick Mahomes. And let's add in the fact, Mike, that defense is balling this year. That defense is absolutely balling. So while a lot of times we talk about Philly and San Fran with the most complete teams, you got to start throwing Kansas City in there because of the way that defense is playing.
I won't even say complete defensive-led team right now. They're waiting for the offense to catch up in terms of consistent production. They kind of got their get-right game this weekend. Jason Fitz's beloved lifelong diehard Raiders fandom got put to the test. Jason, for someone who watched that, I'm sure as intently as anybody, though, early deficit for the Chiefs, a 2-touchdown deficit, and all of a sudden they were able to turn it on. The offense has been trying to find traction all year. What did you see, and what do you think they might have found against that Raiders team?
Okay, well, there's a couple of things. We knew that Kelce always kills the Raiders. We knew that was going to happen. But I think the Rashee Rice thing was a nice development, and part of that was the Raiders. I mean, the Raiders tackled so poorly in that game that Marcus Peters got cut, right? Let's just lay that out. That's just how bad it went. But part of that is it felt like they found a little element with Rashee. And by the way, I thought their offensive line held up really well too. So Max Crosby playing on a bum knee still had 1 sack, but it wasn't disruptive the way it usually is. I think Kansas City's offense, to that point, if they can get Rashee Rice comfortable, they become dynamic. Nobody on that offensive side. They still had drop issues in that game. Here's my only challenge to Kansas, because I agree with you, and let me say this, I've been saying this on Yahoo all week. We talk about the Chiefs like they're dead and they have a problem. They were missing 2 of their best players in their week 1 loss. Patrick Mahomes had the flu in their next loss, and then they were 1 incomplete drop touchdown pass away from beating the Eagles. So you could make a compelling argument that the Chiefs obviously, even with all their failings, are playing like the best team in the league. The only problem is, I'll use the college football thing here, good losses versus great wins, because the 49ers have blowout wins over quality opponents. And for me, that's the reason that I would put San Francisco at number 2 and Kansas City at 3. It's not that San Francisco has worse losses, and I'll acknowledge that, but San Francisco has gone out and kicked the snot out of really good teams, according to this committee, usually, right? So, you look at the way they beat Jacksonville, the way they beat the Cowboys, they have beat the good teams convincingly, and they're playing convincingly again. So I personally would put San Francisco 2 and Kansas City 3.
So I'm with Dad. I would probably put Kansas City at 2 just because Patrick Mahomes is lodged in my brain. But in terms of what you mentioned, San Francisco's got a real healthy argument, especially when they're healthy. We've seen the difference in this team. And you could say it's wrong because when you've got this many all-pros, the idea that just losing one or two of them should be as damning to the 49ers as it seemed to be. But, hey, them's the breaks, and now they're healthy. They got Debo and Trent Williams back. And defensively, since they added Chase Young, the results have been pretty staggering in terms of sack production during weeks 10 through 12, averaging 5 sacks per game. Now, you can look at the teams they played. It was the Jags, Bucks, and Seattle. So 2 playoff teams mixed in there in addition to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That defense has gotten added juice. Offensively, they're number 1 in EPA per play when you exclude garbage time from that. So, Dad, they've got about everything that you could want. This is a truly dominant team, and I wouldn't have a problem with them being in the 2 spot, even if right now I would rank them 3rd.
Yeah, I would rank them 3rd as well. And I get what you're saying, Jason, about the wins. I mean, they smoked the Cowboys, though the Cowboys are playing much better now than when San Fran beat them 42-10. Then there are 3 losses in a row to the Browns, to the Vikings, to the Bengals when they still had Joe Burrow. I would put San Francisco 3rd, and the 4th team we're going to get to at some point. I feel like I'm underselling a bit because of how good they're playing, but it's tough not to go with San Francisco next. I mean, they did have that 3-game skid going on, but when they're healthy, and that's always a big question, there may be no better balanced team offensively and defensively than they are, though there are a couple others as well. But what they're able to do, the Chase Young just has to be giddy every single day he goes into facility to where he is right now, teamed up with his old buddy Nick Bosa. So I like them at 3 right now, pretty solidly, Jason.
And they've got a chance for a very quality win this weekend on the road at Philadelphia, by the way, which is where we've always, I think part of this is also, we've talked about, there's something about trying to pick someone that's not going to embarrass you at the party. And I don't feel like San Francisco, because every week we've tried to crown a team, they go out and get their ass whooped the next weekend. We're all like, who's even good in the NFL? I don't feel like that's going to happen for this 49ers team. I do worry a little bit about if it could happen to this Eagles team, who's been living close for a long time, and defensively is about to run into a juggernaut. The number 1 offense in the NFL in terms of yards after catch by receivers. Brandon Ayuk has been sensational with Brock Purdy as his quarterback going back to the last 16 games that now Brock's been the starter with him. So, Jason, I do worry about that a little bit, but I don't worry about San Francisco laying an egg on the road.
But this is also something you and I talk about a lot with the committee where, all right, I'm not going to fight too hard for this because this one works itself out in a few days.
Right.
Like, if San Francisco's at 3, I'm like, yeah, we'll put him at 3. I'll agree to that because let's be real. If they go out and do what they've done to good teams this weekend, they catapult up, right? So, like, this one sort of takes care of itself. So, yeah, I can with a little nod, tip of the cap, I can go Eagles 1, Chiefs 2, 49ers. So, yeah, I can agree with that.
So it seems for the 4th spot, it's going to be between, I would imagine, Baltimore and Dallas. And for me, I'm going with Baltimore. I mean, their defense is absolutely humming. We were talking about that with Cleveland possibly being able to make a run because their defense is right there with Baltimore's. I think there have been 1 and 2. But there's such upheaval at the quarterback position for Cleveland. Could have their 4th starter if Flacco starts this next game, where Lamar Jackson has been healthy, been passing better, still very dangerous with his legs. So, Mike, I'm going Baltimore in the 4 slot at this point.
I mean, you want to talk about defense, Dallas isn't far behind on any metric. Yards per game, 3rd in the NFL. Passing yards per game, they're actually 2nd ahead of the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Baltimore Ravens... and even rush defense-wise, Baltimore's got them outclassed there, which has kind of been the Dallas problem for a while, but not by much. So if we're going to act like that's the biggest differentiator, and then on the other side, the Cowboys' offense seems to have figured something out since that San Francisco game. Now, we all want to wait and watch them do it. We know they've got the stretch coming up that's ultimately going to tell us, hey, how much of that homework that you've been doing actually applies when you've got to take a test, but... right now, you could make a very compelling argument. Dak Prescott statistically has been the best quarterback in football this season in almost every meaningful way. I think I saw Mina Kimes post this the other day. Dak's stat split so far this season: 1st in QBR versus man defense, 1st in QBR versus the blitz, 2nd in QBR under pressure, 2nd in QBR from the pocket, 1st in QBR outside the pocket, and he's been the number 1 quarterback on 3rd down all season long. While this Ravens offense has shown flashes, certainly, Jason, but it seems far less consistent than its counterpart in Dallas.
This is where it gets really complicated for me because to what you just mentioned, I believe today on a neutral field that if we had the Cowboys taking on the Ravens. I believe not only would the Cowboys win that game, but I think Vegas would have them favored in that game on a neutral field. I think that that's a pretty fair statement. However, when you look at just, again, taking the college football metric of it, one of the rules of the committee that we joked about in the past is thou shalt not get blown out. And we did see the Cowboys get the snot kicked out of them by the 49ers. We haven't seen the Ravens have that. Their losses have been close games, weird games, and they have a blowout win over the Lions, who are over here, by the way, saying we belong in this conversation also, right? So, like, there's a little bit of the eye test portion of this of, like, it still sticks in my craw that when we saw the Cowboys play a really good football team, they got the you-know-what kicked out of them. So I think the Cowboys are better today. And everything you just mentioned, also I think that, you know, a tip of the cap to the head coaching there, because we've been very hard over the course of the last several years on McCarthy, right? But it's not by accident that CeeDee Lamb is blown up, and it's not by accident that Dak is playing so well. Like, the offense is cooking, and I think part of that's coaching too. So I think the Cowboys are a better football team, but I can't get that loss out of my mind. So, like, that's the split for me. I put the Ravens in because I haven't seen to your point, I haven't seen the Ravens get embarrassed this year. I have seen the Cowboys get embarrassed.
So does that mean we go, we seem to agree, and Mike, I want to ask Jason a college question. It seems we're going Philly, KC, San Francisco, Baltimore, of which it's going to change because Philly plays San Francisco. So we know that's going to change. Just like Mike, every week we have done this. Somebody just disappoints and ends up dropping out. Jason, I got to ask you this, because Mike and I are so on opposite sides of this. So let's go to you as a deciding factor, as long as you're picking my side. So with the college playoffs, the conference championship games coming up, I have said this, and Mike disagrees. I said if Alabama beats Georgia and only one, if it's between then and Texas beats Oklahoma State and wins the Big 12, but only one of those teams gets into the Final Four, I say it's Alabama, even though Texas beat them head-to-head. Alabama will have beaten the committee's number one team in the country, so I think Alabama would be the team to get in. What say you?
Deep in the heart of Texas. Look, Texas is going in that situation. Two reasons that Texas is going in. One, they just showed you that the value of a huge win isn't what we thought it would be, because Michigan beat Ohio State, which is the best win we've seen all year. But that didn't vault Michigan to number one over Georgia, which would have been easy for the committee to do, knowing that the SEC championship game could make them flip that easily if they wanted to for Georgia. So I think that speaks to how they value wins. And then the other part of it is because Texas has been ahead of Alabama in every single, like I thought this was the week. I thought the Iron Bowl was the week to say, no, they are playing, we're going to move them up. The fact that they didn't move them up, to me, means that they are still valuing that head-to-head. Oklahoma State being ranked number 18 coming in this week still gives at least a resume tick on this. I think if there's only room for one of those two teams, Texas goes in over Alabama, and a one-loss Alabama SEC champion is left out of the college football playoff, which causes total chaos.
So you're saying the SEC in that case would be left out of the college playoffs, where I said we have an ISO camera on Greg Sankey to watch his head explode. I don't think, Mike, there's any way that happens.
I mean, you've just been outvoted 2-1. This is democracy on display here in the NFL Playoff Committee, and you have just been voted wrong, good sir. Yeah, very real committee, not a fake committee at all.
This really isn't a great committee meeting because nothing has been catered. So I don't know if I can fully say that this is a committee meeting.
It does insult the sensibilities. And that's every time I talk about Alabama, people say, well, it just doesn't make sense. And I agree. Like, the thought of an SEC champion not being in the playoff feels weird. But if the committee is going to remain consistent to the way they're doing the job, I believe that Texas does that. And they can't care about the SEC more than they care about the head-to-head matchup.
Would you be outraged? Would both of you be absolutely, outraged if Alabama went in over Texas? Or would it be like, oh, okay, I could see possibly that happening? Or would you say it's completely
I'd have
ridiculous?
a pretty big problem with it. I'd have a pretty big problem with it just on principle for what that stands for. And I understand this is all it's not like going to set a precedent that's dangerous going forward necessarily, because we're going to get a 12-team playoff. But at the same time, 12-team playoff means we have more room for situations where you've got head-to-head victories that are going to come into account. And Jason, for that to not mean anything, I think would be a pretty damning indictment of this whole thing that we're supposed to be doing, even if they say it's best and not most deserving, because we've never seen that borne out in the results. What we have have seen is what you can see. Jason Fitz covering college football, the NFL, and all variety of sports over at Yahoo Sports. Listen to him on Fox Sports Radio on the weekends as well. Jason, thank you for convening with the committee once again.
Thank you, boys.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. NFL great Emmitt Smith is a Pro Football Hall of Famer, a three-time Super Bowl champ, NFL MVP in 1993, and he is still the NFL's all-time leading rusher with 18,355 yards and an NFL record 164 rushing touchdowns. Senior was so excited to talk to Emmitt Smith about their playing days, but alas, kidney stones struck again, so only GoJo had a chance to catch up with him.
All right, excited to talk to Hall of Famer and Cowboys legend Emmitt Smith, kind enough to join us here on behalf of Narcan, and we'll certainly get to talk about what you've got going on with them, Emmitt. But, first and foremost, I feel like some of the biggest news in the world of sports right now involves the Cowboys. And going back to your era, Jimmy Johnson finally getting the call up for the Cowboys Ring of Honor was such a huge story in sports. What did that mean for you, for guys on your team, to finally see that moment happen for him?
For me, it's a moment of completion. When you think about the era which we're describing, when the Cowboys began in '89, being 1-15 with Jimmy and Jerry just getting started with the dream and the goal of just developing into a first-class organization. Jimmy was part of all of that. He was the foundation, along with Jerry Jones themselves, being the catalyst for all of the success that we were able to enjoy throughout those 13 years that I played in the National Football League. And so to have guys like Michael Troy, myself, Darren Woodson, Larry Allen, and other players go in during that time, and not to have our head coach there, for me as a player, it was completely disappointing. And so to now bring it full circle and bring closure to it all, I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it sends the right message. And I think it might be the one thing that lift the cloud over the last 15, 20 some years of not being able to get deep into the playoff, because I think the clouds and the stars and everything are starting to line just the right way, because that's just the way it's supposed to be.
When you mentioned that, the current Cowboys team does seem to finally be hitting that mode here. How frustrating has it been as a former player, as someone who is so associated with this franchise, to see the struggles that have gone on for the last couple of decades?
I think the most frustrating thing for me has been seeing our teams have so much talent, but yet that talent has yet to gel together as a complete unit, offense, defense, as well as special team, and to have the mental fortitude or the mental toughness that's required to run the table, as we would say. December is a tough month, and to go into the playoff, you want to win at least 3, if not 4, of the next 3 to 4 games, and so you want to go into the playoff on a high note, and I think that's what we're trying to do. And so far, over the last 4 weeks, or 5 weeks, if you will, our team has progressed tremendously. I think we've grown since the San Francisco 49er game. But have we grown to the level to where we're mentally ready and physically ready to go up against those teams when the energy requires it? We'll find out in the next couple of weeks when Philadelphia comes back here. That'll be our next test. And then from that point on, not to say that Seattle is not a test, but every team is a test. But when it comes down to physicality and going up against the 49ers, we got to bring that energy. And that's what I'm looking for.
No doubt. It's a measuring stick game, and certainly has been for this era of the Cowboys. You mentioned the last few weeks and the improvement the Cowboys made. A lot of people pointing back to the quarterback, Dak Prescott, right now. Has this season and really this stretch of play for him changed your thought on his long-term outlook as the Cowboys quarterback?
First of all, my long-term outlook about Dak Prescott has never changed. I still think Dak Prescott is our quarterback and should be our quarterback until his time of retirement. Until we can find somebody much better to replace him with, we have to ride with a horse that's bringing us right to the dance right now, and that's Dak Prescott. So as far as I'm concerned, he is our guy, and he's going to be our guy for a long time.
What stands out to you about the way that he's played this year, though, as he's getting MVP conversation now? Do you see even a different level or a different gear that he's found so far this year?
I don't know if it's a gear or a level, but I think what is happening, I think this is where people fail to analyze the game from the right perspective. Play selection has a lot to do with the success of any quarterback or any player. Play development, how things are packaged, how things are schemed, what other things can you build off of certain packages that give the defense a certain look or a consistent look, but not knowing what's all in the package and when it's coming. To me, I think that's the difference between the way the 49ers beat us early in the season and the way that we're playing ball right now. I think McCarthy has expanded the offense a little bit. If you look over the last 3 to 4 weeks, the ball has been thrown to multiple players and not trying to get it forced into CeeDee Lamb here in 3rd down and 25 type situations. The ball itself has been thrown around, and we are having possessions and getting the ball in the right position in terms of yardage wise per down to convert. Early on, I don't think we was doing those things, but there are certain things that we still need to eliminate: penalties, dumb mistakes, false starts, and all those kind of things. Making sure that we get the play in on time so we don't burn timeouts and things like that. When to go forward on 4th down and all those kind of things versus when to punt. The emotional aspect of the game when your team has had a long drive and now it's 4th and 2 or something like that. Instead of rewarding them with the field goal, you want to go forward on 4th and 2 and run a risk of not getting any points out of it. So you keep the momentum up and the emotional aspect of the team intact, and you lean on your defense, which is pretty daggone good.
Looking back around the rest of the league, I mean, you spent so much time around this. You're someone who's known for his career longevity, and part of that is being able to withstand injury and battle back. What do you make of what we've seen from Aaron Rodgers right now? It just got announced the other day that he's been cleared to return to practice after the Achilles injury he saw early in the season. As someone who's seen a ton of football and been around a ton of football, are you a little bit stunned at what we're looking at right now?
No, I'm not. And the reason why I'm not stunned is because I'm a realist and I understand that technology evolves and things get better over time. And what we're seeing and what we're witnessing is some of the things that are readily available to help enhance the recovery aspect of an athlete that can be utilized in general population as far as I'm concerned. The thing is, we have to be open and honest with ourselves in terms of what works and what does not work and what he went through and what he's done and what the doctors have done. The reality of the fact is I'm proud of the simple fact that the man is able to bounce back. The question is how well he's able to transition now onto the football field and do the things that he used to be able to do. So I'm not shocked and I'm not surprised. I think Tom Brady broke the mold by playing for 400 years. And so when you have the ability to do things that others are not doing, those are areas that needs to be studied.
Emmitt, we know you're here on behalf of Norcan. What can you tell us about what you're working on with them right now?
Yeah. I've teamed up with Emergent for the Ready to Rescue campaign to raise awareness on how we all can be prepared for opioid emergencies. The whole mission is to just spread awareness, reduce the stigma out there in the marketplace, and let people know that opioid emergencies can occur at any point in time to anyone, anywhere. And by equipping yourself with the Norcan nasal spray, you can be ready for any type of opioid emergency. Oftentimes we think we can walk down the street, see somebody laying on the street, and it may be a homeless person, it may just be somebody just laid out, could be needing a serious help. Then to be equipped and to be ready to give them the Norcan nasal spray, which doesn't hurt anyone and is readily available over the counter. So having it on hand can only help save a life and also help you just in case you might need it. Because with fentanyl running rampant around the country, around the world, killing people left and right, it's nice to know that there's something out there that we can equip ourselves with just in case we need to have it for an emergency.
That preparation is incredibly valuable. There's no doubt about it. Emmitt, can't thank you enough for spreading awareness about that, for your time here. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you again soon.
No, you're welcome. And if you need more information around Norcan nasal spray, go to Norcan.com. You can get more information around opioid overdose and opioid emergencies.
Dad, I know you had to look on fondly remembering your kidney stone issues from yesterday as you watched Emmitt Smith in that interview, but did it bring back any jarring memories of him running past arm tackles through your guys' Eagles defense?
So I hit him the hardest I think I ever hit anybody, right? And it goes to that when you make that comparison of like if you're boxing and you unload and hit the boxer as your opponent as hard as you know you can possibly hit somebody, and they just kind of shrug it off and look back at you and you go, oh, damn. So they ran a wide play one play. And again, Emmitt's the back I played against the most with my years in Philly and obviously his in Dallas. And they ran a wide play. It was toward the sideline. This, again, is back in the day when, there were a lot less restrictive ways you could tackle somebody. And so now this is all the way to the sideline, and it took me that long to build up my full head of steam. But I was running as fast as I could to the sideline, and he was turning the corner. Mike, I launched and unloaded my shoulder pad and helmet into the side of his shoulder and his face mask and the side of his head, and just blew him up out of bounds. He went flying out of bounds. I went flying out of bounds. And as I was hitting him, I literally, you think of stuff in a split second on the field. I'm like, oh my God, I destroyed him. And he hits the ground, I hit the ground, and I look up and he pops back up and just jogs right by me back to the huddle. I go, are you kidding me? I mean, I just gave him my best shot I've ever given anybody, and he barely flinched. He's one of the toughest guys I have ever tried to tackle, one of the hardest runners, the way he would drop his shoulder. And I think, Mike, he's the all-time leading rusher at 18,355 yards. He passed Walter Payton, who was second. The first current player that shows up is 39th. That's Derrick Henry with just over 9,000 yards. So still only halfway to Emmitt. 40th, as far as active players, is Zeke Elliott. Then you get down to 78th, Latavius Murray. 80 is Melvin Gordon. 81 is Nick Chubb. We talk every now and then in radio. We would do the record that's never going to be broken. It's always a fun radio kind of thing to do. I don't see his record ever being broken. The way the NFL is now, the way we've gone to more two-back systems, where not one guy outside of like a Derrick Henry, there's still some, like a Derrick Henry who gets most of the carries, and just the way the game has changed, I think that record is safe for a long, long time, if not forever, Mike.
Oh, yeah, I don't think it's getting touched. I think, between the shifts that we've seen in rules in the NFL, quarterbacks being a viable part of the rushing attack now that we've let players with different skill sets into that spot, I just think we would need to see such a tectonic shift back in what's allowed by defenses, offense, all that stuff would have to change in a way that I just don't see happening given what we've seen that position become. So I'm totally with you. Emmitt's going to have that by himself for a long time, and that golden era is going to have their champion to hold up when men were men and running backs were the glamour position in the NFL. Yeah. So that is certainly going to be his forever and always. That story will be yours forever and always, too. And here in the moment, we've got Thursday Night Football coming up. Jesse, big one. We talked about in the very real NFL Playoff Rankings Committee rankings. The Dallas Cowboys place in all of this. They got a good chance to send a message to us and the rest of the committee Thursday night.
Yeah, Seahawks at Cowboys. Cowboys have won 3 straight. They are rolling right now. Seahawks, on the other hand, have lost 3 of 4. And Dallas is undefeated at home. They are 5-0. So you guys did have a chance to talk to Seahawks linebacker Jordan Brooks on the matchup, get his impressions of Dak Prescott and this Dallas offense.
I think he's been playing great, and he's really been the bell cow for that offense. And so, they feature a lot of guys, at the receiver spot. They got a good run back there in a solid O-line. Overall, they have a nice looking offense, and we got to come out prepared and come out ready to play these guys. When you watch the tape, they throw the ball all over the place. Like I said, they like to feature their receiver 88, and so it's about staying on top, high-lowing, tackling well, being where we need to be, and playing sound, disciplined football.
All right, guys, the Cowboys are entering like a tough stretch of their season. So they really need this game to be a statement win here kind of before they head into, a statement win against the Seahawks. But they just need to get the W before they head into this really tough stretch.
Yep. Well, yeah, because beyond that is Philadelphia, Buffalo, Miami, and Detroit. And, Dad, I guess that's the one thing you could point to here is maybe a danger is the look-ahead idea of, if you do get caught peaking in this league where it's infinitely more damning because there are no slouches here. While Seattle struggled a little bit, and I saw Pete Carroll and the offense saying they want to try and get the ball out of Geno Smith's hands a little bit quicker. They're getting Abe Lucas, their right tackle back, who was lost really after the first game of the season, which is no doubt going to help some. But I just think this Cowboys team right now is in such a good rhythm offensively. And then defensively, Deron Bland, are we going to have Defensive Player of the Year conversations? How much should a guy who's turned the ball over to that extent, set the NFL record for single-season pick sixes on Thanksgiving with that effort, is that enough, Dad, in your mind, especially because we know turnovers are looked at a little bit differently as a defensive statistic? Is that enough to vault him into Defensive Player of the Year in your mind?
It should, yes, because there's one thing about turnovers. There's another thing of turning them into points all by yourself. And to set the NFL record for pick sixes with 5 in a year, and oh, by the way, they still have a handful of games to go, I think his name squarely is going to be there. You know, a lot of times it's a guy with a lot of sacks, as we know, or interceptions, but he's, as we said, pick sixing. So, and it's not like a household name that we're used to talking about, so that might catch some people by surprise a little bit. But in the football world, I mean, listen, and remember, it was Trayvon Diggs, got hurt there, that helped give Bland more of an opportunity with Stephon Gilmore, who they have in that secondary as well. So it would be kind of a weird way of somebody stepping up that you didn't think would be that guy, but he should be without question. So we'll see how that finishes up. I actually look forward to next week. I'll be calling that in Dallas, calling the Philly-Dallas game. But it is a big game for them. Seattle sitting in the playoffs as we speak right now. You mentioned getting Abe Lucas back. Phil Hayes, their right guard, is out, though. He's got the toe injury. It looks like the running back, Kenneth Walker, is doubtful for this one. And incredibly, we're in week 13? The Dallas Cowboys basically have nobody injured. Everybody was practicing, which is amazing for this late in the season. So kudos to them on that. And some of that is luck, as we know, from the injury standpoint. But they're playing really well right now. Seattle slipping the last couple of games. It's been a while, 20 possessions since a touchdown. Though before that, Geno Smith had a monster game throwing for almost 370 yards against Washington, I think. So they're trying to bring it back out after the two losses in a row and fighting for one of those last playoff spots.
And we know Geno got banged up during that stretch, too. That's certainly a part of it, even if it's an elbow contusion and not something internal. But I think you look for them. You mentioned so much of that production came against a Washington defense that now had to fire Jack Del Rio, the defensive coordinator, because they've been so bad. You look 6 sacks in a 4-game stretch, but 3 of them came against a Washington offense that's been giving them away like they're getting, going on style and on sale at the end of the year. So I think some of Seattle's early season success is given away to, in part, injury. We know they got banged up pretty early on, and it's not a skill in this league, but it is the most important factor. And for Dallas, I think specifically, Dad, their offensive line in the last couple of seasons we've seen, especially with Tyron Smith, their left tackle, the splits with him on and off the field, how injured he's been. He looks good right now. That whole unit is playing high-level ball. Tyler Smith next to him is playing like an all-pro, if not just a future all-pro. And I think that unit being as solidified as it is against this Seattle defensive front is going to make it awful difficult for the Seahawks to get them in compromising positions where they can even begin to try and tee off on Dak Prescott.
So look at what we kind of envision, right? As players have to play the game and obviously look at it on a week-to-week basis. What I think a lot of people are doing is, okay, we think Dallas should be able to take care of Seattle. Then they have 10 days before their game against Philly. And Philly, I don't think it would shock a lot of people if they got beat by San Francisco. And if that happens, now all of a sudden it's one game separating Dallas and Philly, them playing next week. And if Dallas gets that win, they're now even in the loss column and split for the regular season. So all of a sudden you start looking forward and it could get very, very interesting.
The Dallas Cowboys, who we said at the beginning of the season needed to be Super Bowl or bust, trending in the right direction, no doubt. All right, guys, time to wrap up the show the way we always do. This, that, the third, 3 quick stories. Send you off on into the rest of your day. As always, do the download, subscribe, rate, review thing. Seriously, we appreciate it. 5-star rating. Check us out Monday through Friday live here from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. But if you got to miss for whatever reason and you miss our great guests like Jason Fitz from Yahoo Sports that helped us with the NFL Playoff Committee that is real and spectacular, and Emmitt Smith, the pro football, college football, all-around Hall of Fame guy and running back here that took some time with us. Check those out wherever you get your podcasts. Check it out right here after we get done live on the DraftKings YouTube channel as well. Guys, let's get to this, that, and the third. And start it off yesterday. I don't know where you guys are on this. We had the Spotify Wraps yesterday. We talked about that on the show relative to people sharing the podcast at the end of the year, but it collects your musical artists that you were most listened to, tells you who you were in the top percentage of listeners-wise. And a lot of people go back and forth on this. Jesse, as someone who lives much more on social media than my dad, is a little more like me in this. Do you like seeing people's Spotify Wraps? Because I see a lot of people like, I don't care about your rap. I kind of like it. I'm into your Spotify year-end Wraps.
I'm kind of like middle ground here. Like, I don't really care, but I don't have a problem with you sharing it. Like, I'm not going to like poo-poo it and be like, this is so lame. But I also think some people take a weird amount of pride in certain things. Like, they're like, I never took my AirPods out. I listened for 300 days straight. And you're like, okay. Or people taking it as an opportunity to be like, my taste in music is better than yours. And you're just like, okay, cool. Thank you.
Those are the people, Dad, that I would probably have the problem with, is anyone who uses this as an opportunity to flex elitist musical taste.
Yeah.
Flex that or think it's their trophy on the mantle. But it is amazing seeing some of the numbers out there that these artists get. That just is stunning to me.
It is, and no one more so than Taylor Swift, named Spotify's Global Artist of 2023, and would have been on my top Spotify rap, there's no doubt, if I had Spotify. This is where every year everyone's always like, oh, Mike, what's your rap look like? And I'm like, I have no idea, because I don't actually subscribe to Spotify. For some reason, it was one of the few places that I've drawn the line in terms of either streaming television or music services that I didn't want to add to the pile because I already had Apple Music. So I love Taylor Swift feigning like she was surprised that this happened. It's part of the charm. It's why at the beginning of every concert, she introduces herself and says, hi, I'm Taylor, because that's still some of the aw shuck stuff that you got to have in your game when you're relatable.
When we play music in the house here, when I go to it, it has Spotify on there, so we must have it. I have no idea. And I don't know what these rap things are, so I'm out of this
seniors
one.
Wrapped. We got to find seniors wrapped. We need
it's
it.
So much Gordon Lightfoot. It's Gordon Lightfoot and it's Darius Rucker. Because we tried to tell my dad the other day as he was playing a playlist, driving around in the car with me and my mom, we're like, Darius has to be Dad's most streamed artist. And my dad's like, no, I have a very diverse playlist in here.
I do.
I've got tons of artists on this. And then the next 3 songs were Darius, not even Hootie songs. They were Darius Rucker solo songs.
I have it on shuffle. I can't help where it shuffles, but I guarantee you I have more songs by other artists on there, I think. I haven't counted as of late.
Very convincing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're just a good
whatever.
Friend. That's all that is.
Yeah, he's a good friend who by the way,
Darius Rucker.
He's pretty good singer too, last I checked. So
hell yeah, brother.
No one's blaming you. We're just pointing out.
Oh, you're mocking me.
You're
mocking me. You're mocking me.
Well, no, not like I'm going to mock our next guy. Jesse, let's get to that. A.J. Brown decided to join Kyrie Irving amongst the flat earthers in sports in a way that it should still be disappointing to us, even though apparently it's not.
Yeah, I don't understand what this is about. So he, was asked, do you think the earth is flat? And he said, have you ever seen a rocket take off?
Do you believe the earth is flat?
No, I don't.
You sure about that?
Have you ever paid attention to rockets when they take off?
No.
I want you to go look up a rocket taking off and see the angle that it takes off at and wonder why it never goes straight up in the air.
Am I missing something about rockets taking off from the earth?
I don't even know if that makes sense from like
because they do go straight up.
I'm trying to think of what he's even implying.
Right, but also he's like, and tell me why it doesn't go straight up. It does.
Yeah, it does. Goes straight up.
It goes straight
in the
up.
Air. And then goes on an angle, but it takes off straight and then goes on. I would have pressed him and said, what do you mean? What? Yes, I've seen a rocket take off. Explain to me what you mean.
Yes. My big question for flat earthers is who is gaining anything by having this conspiracy? Like, what is the gain for the government trying to convince us that the earth is round if it's not?
Hey, man, think about what's on the other side that they don't want you to see. That underneath Earth, that's where it's really popping off.
Apparently, that's like what somebody, I said this earlier, and one of our producers was like, maybe it's the globe people, the people that make globes. They got to keep going.
You got to keep big globes spinning, baby.
Yeah.
Those wheels don't turn all by themselves. I will say the best part about being a, part-time conspiracy theorist, because I don't know how A.J. Brown gets down. I've often maintained, and this kind of got co-opted when Aaron Rodgers has taken it a little bit too far in certain areas, but every locker room's got a conspiracy theorist guy. Like, it's a tried and true portion of every locker room experience. And with most, the best part about being the conspiracy theory guys, you don't actually have to know what you're talking about. You just have to say, hey, you should probably look into that. Are you really going to believe everything that they tell you? And all you have to do is imply and sow seeds of doubt and not actually back up anything with any meaningful amount of research or information.
It's like a philosophy class. There's no right answer, right? It's philosophical.
I mean, I
what
feel
direction
like
you're going.
There is a right answer, and it's that the earth is round.
Well, here there's definitely a right answer. Yeah.
Yes,
next he's going to say,
prove it.
Yeah.
I'm no scientist, but that's the other thing too that I just love in this day and age of the internet where people, Google things and are like, I'm a doctor. Okay, we can Google it. And just because a bunch of people in a Reddit subgroup said that the earth is flat, we're like, you should do some research on that in the Reddit subgroup.
What's our biggest conspiracy theory out there? Is it the earth is flat? Is it there were no dinosaurs? I mean, again,
moon
things you can normally...
seems to be a popular one.
Assassination
moon landing,
theories.
right? Yeah. There's
a lot.
That's true.
Guys, let's go from philosophy and conspiracy theories to good old-fashioned economics here for the third. The New Heights podcast featuring Travis Kelce and Jason Kelce had a surprise guest yesterday in Cleveland native and rapper Machine Gun Kelly, who made a very interesting offer, Jesse, to one Travis Kelce for his services.
Yeah, he offered him $500,000 to play for the Browns, which shows a shocking lack of awareness about how much Travis Kelce makes if he thinks that is going to sway him.
I got my dog Kels calling me right now. He called in for a request last week. Yeah, Machine Gun Kelly, MGK. Kels, what's good, dog? You're live, brother.
What up?
Hey, Jason, can I talk to your brother really quick?
Do your thing.
What you got for me, Kels?
All right, look, I will give you $500,000 cash upon arrival, as well as matching that same amount as a donation to both of our high schools, both Shaker Heights and Cleveland Heights, as well as everyday breakfast and coffee delivery from my restaurant.
Oh my gosh.
If you would just come home and put on these colors right here. And
you know that was the original dream, dog. You know that was the dream.
Come home, put these colors on, and rock the city.
What?
Now, I didn't hear the whole interview, but at any point, did Jason or somebody say, hey, Machine Gun, do you know what he makes? I mean, he signed a 4-year, over $57 million contract. Do you know what you're doing here? You better come to the table with a hell of a lot more cash than that.
I do just love my dad referring to him as first name Machine Gun. Hey, Machine Gun,
whatever.
I read online that he's dropping the Gun Kelly. He's just going to be Machine.
Machine Kelly, yes.
No, just Machine
Kelly now.
It's
just Machine.
He's just
one word.
He's like Madonna now. It's just Machine.
Mike, kind of like you. You're just GoJo.
Apparently. I mean, he should go by Dr. Evil because he had that lowball $1 million that he thought was going to move the needle for Travis Kelce, who does a phenomenal job code switching in his various conversations. We hope you enjoyed all the conversations on this show. If you did, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review, leave us that 5-star rating, and check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. Thanks so much. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. We'll talk to you tomorrow.